Tonight, we honor and celebrate the best in American journalism. The Benjamin C. Bradley Editor of the Year Award is the oldest and most prestigious award for an editor. And we're pleased to have Sally Quinn with us tonight to celebrate her husband's legacy. This year, the award goes to John Harris and Jim VandeHei. Co-founders of POLITICO. As a team, they have adapted traditional political reporting for the digital age. And so tonight, we take a few minutes to hear their perspectives on the influences of this new landscape. Please join me in welcoming John and Jim.
Good evening, and thank you very much to the National Press Foundation. When I had that exciting call from Sandy Johnson a couple of months ago, I guess it was in October, I've had a guilty conscience ever since because there's so many of my Politico colleagues that know how fraudulent the award is. I'm very proud of Politico. We worked very hard at it. The truth is it's probably been years since I sat at a keyboard and edited a story. I don't know that Jim ever has done that, but it's been years since I've done it. And even when I did do it, the fact is I was not a very good editor. Jonathan Martin was one of the Politico originals. He's now at the New York Times. He called me the Lieutenant Calley of editors. Remember from the Vietnam officer who said in order to save the village, he had to destroy it. That's always been my philosophy of editing. In order to save the story, I destroy it and rewrite it top to bottom, which is not what a great editor does. So I do feel a little funny accepting an award about editing. I decided, despite that, I wanted to do it for three reasons. One is to thank my wife, Ann O'Hanlon. She's there with my mother, Nancy Hamlin, and my sister, Catherine Harris, and along with Autumn VandeHei. They've sacrificed more for Politico than anyone who doesn't actually get paid by Politico. So thank you. The other is I wanted to share a couple of names with you of people who actually are editors, like Susan Glasser and Marty Cady, my colleagues who are here, and their colleagues who aren't here because they're busy editing debate coverage. Blake Hounshell and Peter Canellas, Kristen Roberts, all are part of our team here. And our new team in Brussels, Carrie Budock-Brown, Matt Kaminsky. Those are great editors, and they should be winning this award, not me. And the third reason I was happy to accept this award was to talk a little bit about Ben Bradley. And Sally, thank you for joining us. I was part of a generation, I guess really several generations, as we all know, of young reporters who idolized Ben Bradley. He was why I wanted to work at the Washington Post when I arrived there at age 21 as an intern. It was because I wanted to work for Ben Bradley's paper. And so first 10 years of my career there, I'd be thrilled. He didn't know who I was, but he'd say hello. How are you? On the elevator, that raspy voice, and I'd be thrilled for the rest of the day because Ben Bradley said hello to me, even though he didn't know my name. And the next 10 years or so, he finally learned my name. And then became, of course, a friend. Ben was interested in everything. He was curious about everything. He was interested in Politico. He'd ask us, what is it? I don't get this, what you guys are doing. Tell me about it. But he was fascinated by it. He said, are you going to come back to the Post, John? I said, Ben, I don't think so. You should talk to Vandy, though. I think he's wobbly. It turned out he was right. Jim and I have had a great adventure at Politico, and we're talking about the future of journalism. Really the way I think Jim and I have always seen Politico is even though we are trying to answer the question of what's next for our business, we're always, and everything is changing, as we all in this room know, the way we report news, the way we connect with our audience, the way we present our stories. Everything is changing, but beneath that, we've always been motivated by, I think, timeless values that we really learned from Ben and people like Ben. the importance of fairness, impact, public service, a belief in the primacy of facts instead of just opinion. That's what drives us. That's what drives all of us here in this room. And I think we're trying to defend and vindicate those values. And if I could just tell you a little bit about what Ben Bradlee means to me. I know the exact moment. I said I wanted to work for Ben Bradlee's newspaper. I know the exact moment when that became true. It was 33 years ago, October of 1982. I was at the library of Carleton College in Minnesota, where I'm a graduate. I was in the library a lot. I didn't study a lot, but I would go there and read magazines. And I picked up a copy of American Heritage magazine. Had an interview, long Q&A with Ben. Probably ran 15,000 words or so. It was by a colleague many of us would know, Michael Gartner, then of the Des Moines Register. And he was talking with Ben about journalism and how Ben practiced it, what motivated him, what he believed in it. I was enthralled by it. I read it over and over again that very week. And I went back to it. It's online. You can go to AmericanHeritage.com. And I just read it again this week. Some things struck me. Michael Gartner was asking Ben, what's the role of an editor? He said, the executive editor of the Post leads a group of more or less talented people and persuades, cudgels them to come as close to the truth as they humanly can in a period of 12 or 15 hours. Well, that's what we do. That's what we all do. We now don't have 12 or 15 hours. Sometimes we have 12 or 15 minutes. But that's what we're trying to do. We still believe that. Ben was asked about whether there's a profitable future in journalism. Remember, this is 1982. He said, I always thought that a great sort of strange offshoot of Watergate was that it might prove to publishers that investigative reporting and taking on the establishment could be financially successful. Well, that's what we believe at Politico, that deep investigative reporting, sophisticated profiles, the kind of work that can't be done on Twitter, can't be done just as a quick one-off, really requires real reportorial enterprise. That work has an audience, and it's got a business future. It's been hugely gratifying to Jim and myself, Susan, and our other colleagues to learn those are the stories, more than the quick hits, that have the big traffic surges, that have the real impact. And we're building a business around that. We believe that. Ben talked about ownership. He said, what worries me most about the American press in general are owners who don't have a commitment to quality. Ben, like me, worked for a great owner in the Graham family. Jim and I found another great owner in Robert Albritton, who's also investing in quality. Every single dime that Politico has made, he's turned back into the business. He's not interested in selling. He's interested in investing. That's what a great owner does. And I have to take a minute to say thank you to Robert Albritton. And then finally, Ben was asked, well, why do young people come into journalism? What motivates them? And Ben said in 1982, I don't know. 10 years ago, the answer was Woodward and Bernstein. It's still the most exciting business there is. I mean, what the hell would I do if I weren't in the newspaper business? I don't know what I'd do. I don't know who'd hire me. And I don't know what I'd be any good at, except maybe chopping wood. And Sally, I know he chopped a lot of wood out in St. Mary's County. But I would say that's Ben's answer, is my answer, and I'm sure it's all of our answers. It's still the most exciting business there is. So thank you very much for the National Press Foundation in acknowledging us. We've had great fun, and it's the most exciting work we've ever done.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Press Foundation for giving us this award. I didn't know Ben as well as John did. I came to the Post later. I was only there for about 3 or 4 years, but I was one of the lucky guys sort of in the locker room who would go down to that dumpy diner they used to have inside of the Washington Post, and you could sit there with Ben Bradlee, and you could talk about journalism. And one of the things that always you could tell about Ben is he loved competition. He loved journalism. I love competition. We in this room love competition. I think it sharpens the mind, it strengthens the soul. I think it's one of the reasons Politico has been successful. We compete for sources, for scoops, and for notoriety for the coverage that all of us have. And I think that's an awesome thing. But I think one of the best things about journalism, when I think about the future of journalism, forget about the models. I think this age of disruption, ultimately we're going to figure it out. But the reason that I'm optimistic about journalism and have been optimistic about journalism is the people in this room and what unifies us. What unifies us is that we believe journalism matters, that the country, that the world needs really good, nonpartisan, deeply reported journalism, that society is better for it. We're also unified in resisting things. I think every person in this room, I think, is unified in the fight against sort of the cheap tricks for trashy clicks. And there's a huge trend in our industry towards that. People think that you can build a business model on it. It's mythology. At the end of the day, people want quality content, and I believe that we can produce a model around it. To me, I've been blessed. I've been very, very blessed in that the thing I love about journalism is it's a fraternity. You're never that good individually. You're only as good as your editors, as your reporters, as your colleagues, as your mentors. And I just want to mention a couple of those people and tell a few quick stories. One, I want to thank reporters at Politico, the reporters, the editors, the copy editors, the producers. I want to thank those that work there now, the not insignificant number of you who used to work there, and then the rest of you who either will or should work at Politico. I love it that people have believed in the mission that John and I had and that Robert Albritton backed. I love that there are people like Robert and many people in this room who are still willing to believe in journalism and invest in it. I always tell people, if you're looking to make a quick buck, journalism's not the best place to put your money. Go put it in healthcare, energy, or something like that. But if you care about having a hell of a lot of fun and making a difference, media is awesome. That's never going to change. I would say of all the journalists we've hired at Politico, the one that to me has been a personal coup and maybe the one I'm most proud of is somebody who I wish was here tonight, but he hates being in public, and that's David Rogers. David, I was talking about being blessed. I know so many really cool journalists who've taken an interest in all of us, and about once every quarter, including 3 or 4 days ago, I got to sit down, and this will really test the institutional knowledge of the group. I got to have lunch at a diner with David Rogers and Jim Perry. David Rogers is my mentor. Jim Perry at the Journal was David Rogers' mentor. And it is so much fun to hear them talk about politics over the last 40 to 50 years. That is amazing. David taught me about really reporting. Like, how do you report? Working sources, learning sources, and then mastering your subject matter. David can be brutal. Anyone who knows him, he can be a brutal critic of your work. And I loved it. He took the time to give a crap and to tell me when I could have been better and how I could have worked harder. And because of that, I think I emerged a much better reporter. And despite his gruff demeanor, he's one of the sweetest, most thoughtful people that I've met in journalism. So I wish David were here. For everything that I learned from David on the journalism side and on the reporting side, there's nobody I learned more about writing than from John Harris. This guy, in terms of conceptualization, articulation, the capacity to be able to take that reporting and make people actually want to read it, the guy was a genius, is a genius, and just watching him, being edited by him, taught me so much. He's quoted it a couple times, it's sort of the Mark Twain quote, which I'll get wrong, but the difference between the right word and almost the right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. He always nailed the right word, and he always nailed the right phrase. And it made me, by watching it, a better writer. And I think journalism, to be great, you do have to be both a good reporter and you have to be a good writer. And so, and in terms of, we got the award not because we're editors. I haven't edited in my life, other than to tell someone I hated their lead and thought they could do something different or better. We got the award because of Politico, and Politico wouldn't exist without John. Like, he sharpened me, he challenged me, he strengthened me, and Politico is blessed to have the guy carrying the flag for many years to come. But there's only one person in this room who can claim that without them, there would not be a Politico, and we would not be on this stage today, and that's my wife. I'm going to tell you a couple stories to illuminate this. So there was a moment. So imagine in 2006, Jim and John, who know nothing about business, who are not entrepreneurs, decide that they're going to start Politico. And we get pretty jazzed up, and we're almost ready to do it until the Post lays on the charm. In come the calls from Bradley, from Woodward, from Downey. I mean, you're getting these calls, and you're at the Washington Post. It's really hard to say no to those guys. And so we chickened out. And we walked in, and we're ready to give up until my wife came in and slapped us both upside the head, made us man up, and go start a company. And luckily we did. But it was born without a name. And so we were sitting there struggling, well, what the hell do we call this thing? And we were going through all these weird machinations, including, I think one of the leading contenders at the time was Power in Politics, which we thought you guys would all ridicule as pee-pee. And so it was Autumn who was sitting at the computer at home that came up with the name Politico, which took a day or two for us to warm to, but in the end was genius because it captured our audience, captured our mission. So not only is she brilliant and beautiful, she's the best damn boss I'll ever have. So thank you all for caring about journalism, and thank you for the award.